we are talking to none other than David Smallbone. You're going to say to me, who is David Smallbone? Well, he is an amazing man with an amazing family, and this amazing movie will be seen in the cinemas, and I want to show you this movie. It's just a 2-minute clip. Check it out now.
Okay, stay close. Let's go.
How y'all doing?
Are y'all from England?
Australia. Australia. Wish I had an accent.
Dad, I wrote a song. Thought maybe we could ask for an audition.
Oh, that's great, honey. Let's take it one step at a time. Kay tells me you're a promoter. You know someone looking for one? Well, I may know somebody who should be.
She's been given a beautiful voice. It's a miracle.
She's a special one, son. Your family, they're not in the way. They are the way.
There's no food. We're almost out of money. We need to make some changes. Kids, we need your help. This is everything we have. And sometimes it's going to grow, and sometimes it will shrink. But it cannot be allowed to disappear.
I wonder if he's right. Maybe I'm not meant to sing.
Or maybe you're not meant to sing other people's songs. It's going to be dangerous and scary. And giving up, giving in, it's not an option.
Whatever your dream is, I know you can achieve it.
Please welcome my big sister.
My dream is to be like you. It always has been.
I want a record deal. So do I.
Yeah, well, boys, get in line.
Wasn't that incredible? That is a movie that I've seen already. It's getting released on the 30th, and it will be running, I believe, for quite a few weeks. And let's keep it going in the cinemas as long as it can, because it's a movie about family, and it's a movie about a father who had a great family, but he had an even greater wife. Now, is that true, or is that a lie?
No, buddy. Like, I cry when I talk about two people. I cry when I talk about Helen. She's loved me unconditionally. And I cry when I talk about Jesus, because he challenged me to give my life away. And some of my buddies are doing it tough in marriage. And I can't believe we met 53 years ago, started dating 52 years ago, and celebrated our 49th wedding anniversary on the day the movie came out in America, which was the 26th of last month. Warwick, who else do you know would spend $6 million on a movie to celebrate their 49th wedding anniversary? They'd wait till their 50th, wouldn't they?
Well, they would normally, but then again, I guess none of us are normal, are we, David?
Well, I think that's a wonderful thing about following Jesus. You know, it's an adventure, you know, and here you are in the capital of Australia, you know, shouting this wonderful message loudly, and you encourage the old bloke. I've known you for 4 minutes, and you've encouraged me, bro.
Well, that's good. A bit of trivia. We did meet in a past life. I was a struggling musician. I released a praise album, and you kindly took it under your wing. And, you know, it didn't do too well. I'd like to think it did really well, but it was just an average sort of, you know, sort of collection of songs. It was my first album, actually. I've done 7 in total now. And it was Warwick Marsh and Friends, Praise 1. But I can remember being in your living room and asking the question, well, you asked me the question and you picked up Spirit and Truth, and you were distributing Spirit and Truth, which was the album that came out of Hillsong. And you said, Warwick, I don't understand. Why this album, they put like 40, 50 grand into it, which is equivalent to 200 grand a day. I don't know why it's not selling more. And I, in one of my more intelligent moments, said, "It's before its time, David. It's before its time." I don't know if you can remember that conversation, but trust me, it happened. It's like it's almost in neon lights for me.
Yeah, that must be about 34, 35 years ago.
It was back in 89.
Yeah.
And
I was pushed out of Hillsong, those are the early days of Hillsong. And I ran their label for the first 3 years. And then on my 40th birthday, they called me up that morning and said, "Oh, we're going to do it differently. We don't need you anymore." So I had to move on. And that actually helped me make the decision to go to America. So I look back and I'm thankful that I wasn't held here in Australia, and I was pushed, both Helen and I were pushed to take on the adventure of going to America and having my family do music over there.
Yeah, and just, getting back to this movie, because that's what we really want to sort of celebrate and talk about today. As a father, you must be intensely proud for a number of reasons. First of all, your wife is the hero in the movie, and it's so good to see a mother who's a hero, and it just doesn't happen enough. And it's so wonderful. But your son actually plays you. How does that feel as a father? And he did a phenomenal job.
He did.
So much so that I only just realised before this interview that it was your son. And for some strange reason, I'm thinking, man, he directed the movie. He wrote some of the soundtrack, and he actually played you. How did you feel watching that as a father?
I think it encouraged me incredibly, because my two sons, because it was Luke's idea in For King Country to do the movie. He went to a producer in Hollywood about 4 years ago, started that process. And then Joel came in and co-directed it, co-wrote the script, and acted me. But Warwick, you understand this, for your son to take the responsibility of sharing the hope in Jesus to the world, as you asked me that question, it's emotional for me that they've done in my mind, interested to know what you think, but I think they did a very, very good job. And that it touched me deeply.
Can I just say something about this, David? I produce, well, obviously music, number one, but I've, won awards with a documentary called Humble Hope 3, 4, 5 years ago. And, I watch movies. I'm sort of that sort of crazy creative sort of guy. And I'd have to say the acting is impeccable. The script's impeccable. The camera work is just fantastic. It fits together very beautifully. And I've also had two of my younger guys that work with us here. And by the way, even though a camera decoration is, I work for that, the work I do is also with Dads for Kids. And also these two guys who are young guys, one is 23, very switched on guy, a musician himself, and the other guy is mid-30s. And they thought the movie was fantastic. So, what you said about it being good, I really think it's a really great movie as movies go. And the funny thing is, too, it's whilst it's a message of faith, it's a message of faith that gets to you before you know it. Does that make sense?
Well, we've always had, with For King Country, we've always had this goal of 2 to 82, to get to the little children with For King Country's music, and to get to the grandparents with their music. And I think it's Joel and Luke working together. Luke produced the movie. Joel did a lot of the directing in it. And there's something about, how blood is thicker, with the two of them working together, that it happens in their music. They're able to do a good concert. What happens a lot of time Luke starts the songs and Joel comes along and polishes them. In this case, Luke came up with the idea, and it came out of compassion. What they'd been doing for the last 12 years, Luke would present our story in the compassion story, asking for folks in the audience to commit to supporting a needy child on the other side of the world. That story resonated so well that he felt, I need to talk to a movie company, and it's come out of that. And with our core principles being loving on the brokenhearted and sharing the most wonderful message known to man to as many people as possible through our music, I think they've ended up doing it with the movie as well. And it's, the movie business is doing it tough at the moment. Theaters are down a little bit because of streaming and everything. But in spite of that, I just looked at the numbers. This weekend, it'll be the fourth weekend, I think, out in the US. And on Tuesday night over there, it was the number 9 movie. The first weekend, it was the number 2 movie. So, and then even on Mother's Day, it was the number 3 movie. So I think, just like you and your associates, it's connected with. And I need to tell you, Warwick, Helen and I had nothing to do with the movie. They sent me the script before they filmed it, and I thought, you know what? I'm a strong-willed guy, probably a bit like you, Warwick. I would influence it. So I decided not to read it. Helen did read it, and the only thing she went back to the boys and said is, "Hey guys, just make sure you don't leave out the miracles." And they didn't. I don't know what your thoughts are, but we lived in the miraculous. And what it did for me, Warwick, that whole story, it moved me from being in the business to being in the ministry. And I love the ministry world. And now what I'm trying to do is, how do I bring a church perspective into how we do Christian music? Because our Christian music in America is owned by the corporations. Capitol Records is owned by it's owned by Universal. Provident, the second biggest label, is owned by Sony. And it's, sometimes their values, corporate values, are different to Jesus' values. And so I'm 14. I'm not a spring chicken, but my responsibility in the music world is how we bring Jesus back into every area of our lives, including how we do Christian music business.
So what do you suppose is the key?
I think it's being loud about Jesus in every area. I've got 7 kids, 5 boys and 2 girls, and they're all involved in the entertainment area at some level. And I think my comment to anyone who's prepared to listen, including my own children, and you know what children are like, sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't, but I say, look for the Jesus answer on every question. And I in a funny kind of way, I was a late bloomer. I started in music when I was 16. So I was around it. I worked for a mainstream record label, M7 Records in Sydney. Midnight Oil came out of that label. And then I worked
That's actually quite an achievement. That's quite a major achievement. Midnight Oil came out of the M7, because Midnight Oil went around the world, and they even bought their back catalogue back. How many bands buy the back catalogue back? That's pretty smart.
Oh yeah, well, and the lead singer, he had a Christian perspective. I knew the manager pretty well in that band, and he found Jesus in a powerful way, and we had a lot of good dialogue. But then I worked mainstream television, mainstream radio, and it was all good preparation from what I do now. So now I'm an artist development guy, and I'm just looking at ways how and what you get with the King Country is their music. They speak in parables, really, and what that does, the Christians know what we're singing about. It's what Jesus did when he was here on earth. And the non-Christians think, oh, that's a bit more positive. Because a lot of music out there today is very dark. And I do think, going back to the movie, I do think the boys brought their cultural sensitivity into how they did the movie, because in America, where it's been released now for 3.5 weeks, people are saying, oh yeah, it's a bit of a surprise. It's not cheesy.
Yeah, 100%. It's not cheesy, no.
You look like you're worried about something there.
No, I'm just actually trying to find out how many Grammys. I've just forgotten. Is it 4 Grammys or 5 Grammys your sons have won?
Well, I'm not necessarily bigger than the Grammys and everything, but they've got 4. They've got 4, and their sister's got 1.
And I think they've got
someone was
9 Dove Awards. 9 Dove Awards. Yeah.
I know they've got. I know that they've got quite. They, you know what they did? The boys did a wonderful apprenticeship with their sister, and so when we arrived in America 32 years ago, my wife decided that we would homeschool. I was a bit shocked, because over here we'd had them in Christian schools, but what that allowed to happen when Rebecca's career started 30 years ago, we traveled the world as a family. So all my sons, they learned the art of being on the road and doing production. And so, as people will see on our current tour, they do production at a pretty high level, and it came out of their apprenticeship with their sister. And it never was the plan to do it that way, but it ended up being a beautiful thing. Helen made the decision to keep the kids at home because we knew nobody in America, and so we became a very tight family. But then, after Rebecca's career started, we just traveled everywhere, initially in a van, and then we got into an RV, and then we got into the tour bus. And it's been a beautiful situation. Now, with For King Country, I own a third of For King Country, and it's a partnership. And as you know, partnerships, that can have its moments, but there's a 3-man vote and on important issues. And I think most of the time, whoever gets those 2 votes, it's my sense after the boys have been doing it now for about 15 years ago, there's a degree of wisdom, because it's not a one man's band. And if and I get voted out, I get voted out on occasions, and I've threatened to, when that happens, I've threatened to retire. And I did last year, just on that. I was 73 and said, hey baby, they've voted me out, it's time for me to retire. And she came back and said, the most productive years in your life are in your 60s, the second are in your 70s, the third are in your 50s. I haven't threatened to resign since. She's a smart lady. Maybe she's an unsung hero. What do you think, Warwick?
Now that's a good name for a movie, if I do say so myself, David. Eh?
Yeah.
But now we're talking to fathers as well today. Yeah. Now, you as the father, I know that you've given huge kudos to your wife. And by the way, I happen to be married to a pretty amazing woman myself. I know what it's like.
Congratulations.
Celebrating 49 years married in about 6 months' time. So, I totally get what you're saying. I don't want to take away from her, but there's a saying by the Chinese that a home without a father is like a house without a roof. A home without a father is like a house without a roof. And I run Dads for Kids as well as the Canberra Declaration. And Dads for Kids, our dream is, the words of Malachi, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers. Now, I would suggest somehow you've been able to pull this off, because, it comes through in the movie, it comes from the music, and it reeks of family. And it's not just family, inverted commas, but it's this authentic, gritty, real family, warts and all family, true blue family. I'm sure at times you're a bit confronting for our American brothers and sisters. Is that right?
Yeah, well,
because us Aussies are a little bit too honest sometimes, aren't we? Just too sort of in your face sometimes, correct?
Yeah, but I think it allows us to contribute, and I'm a pretty straight shooter, but at the same time, I'm trying to do it honestly from a Jesus perspective. And when I get out of line, that's when my beloved comes at me. But in answer to your question, I think two things happened. I think 10 years into marriage, I was 35 at the time, I realized I had some growth to do. And I was touring an artist in Australia, and he was reading this book called Inside Out by Larry Crabb. And we went to Perth, we went to Darwin, we went everywhere, 20 dates over 30 days. And I thought, that guy is studying this book. I'd never seen him do that before. I'd done a lot of tours with him. I'm going to read it. And there was a chapter on unconditional love. And I decided after that tour, I would go home and love my wife unconditionally instead of conditionally. And the crazy thing is, Warwick, almost overnight, my marriage went from good to great. And I think what had happened is I stopped blaming her for the crazy, and we didn't have really huge issues, but we probably had some issues. And I took responsibility myself. And that started a whole new approach. And then 7 years after that, I lost everything. And then she supported me through that and never criticized me. I remember going to her and say, hey, baby, I think the only way we're going to get ahead is go to America. And I thought she was going to say no. She said, we'll go for 2 years. 32 years later, we're still here. But I think her unconditional love for me, when I was close to a nervous breakdown when I lost everything, because my mum had a nervous breakdown at exactly that same age. And she didn't criticize me, loved on me. And buddy, you go through that, Warwick, you never forget it, because it was a low moment for me, but an incredible growth moment, because in my weakest, the church loved on me. The church put food on the table. The church furnished our house. You go through something like that, you'd never forget it. And so now I'm cynical of a lot of the cultural approach to life. I love the Jesus way, because I think it's life is a marathon, and the Jesus way. You look at the culture is always sprinting, and when you sprint all the time, you eventually fall over. But the marathon, you can survive, and I just love the practical way of Jesus. It's so wonderfully life-giving.
Yeah, speaking about Jesus, we just released a book late last year. So I'm a convert. It's called Jesus, the Center of It All. So I'm with you. 2 more questions. What tips? Give us 3 tips for being a dad. And again, if you're listening to me today, this man has 7 children. This man, his kids produced the movie. He didn't produce it. He walked away. But if you look at it, it's amazing. He's one of his boys acted him in the movie and also directed at the same time. That's a very hard thing to do. It's hard enough to direct a movie. Trust me, as someone who's done a fair bit of this sort of stuff. But to act, which I've never done, I can't imagine doing both. Mel Gibson does it very, very well, but it's a very, very difficult thing. So this man has done this. So I'm asking him his 3 top tips, because he's got a lot of credibility if you're listening, dads.
I think the first one is love your wife. I think, and with it's the little things. It's the little things. Here I am talking about that, and I'm still continuing to try and grow. And what I started doing, I think it was last year, I started making the bed. Like such a, and in a weird kind of way, that's a big statement, because for 48 years, I didn't make the bed. I suddenly started making the bed. The other thing that happened...
You've been listening to Jordan Peterson, haven't you?
Who's that?
Jordan Peterson says you have to make your bed.
I know about him, but I haven't I haven't listened to him. Where he and I might go separate ways is on the next one. The next one is Helen came to me at the beginning of COVID and said, hey, we need to start praying every night, because when we first got married, we'd pray every night and I'd go to sleep, and that offended her. We were still a praying family, but we didn't have that discipline of praying together every night. And so what that, like, I prayed last night, she'll pray tonight, and it goes for 20 minutes. We just pray about everything, pray about our kids, pray about health struggles, you know, friends who are doing it tough, maybe cancer, whatever. But it lasts about 20 minutes, and that is daily therapy, because if there's ever any tension, after that lifts, and we start the next day, we started clear. The other thing that I would say is talk to your children about your own life experience. Like, they can challenge you on, you know, things that you might have read in a book, but they can't challenge you on things that you've experienced. So telling your own testimony, talking about the importance of forgiveness. Like, you know, I had somebody come up to me. We showed the movie at a big radio thing up in the Gold Coast last year, CMA, I think it's called.
CMA,
and one of my old buddies who had been through a crisis situation running a big business and had been hurt by his ex-partners, he came to me and said, Smallbone, how do you forgive? And I was able to go back to him and say, look, all those people who rejected me when I was doing it tough, they did me a favor because they pointed me in a new direction. And I'm so grateful for that. They were, at the time, I was overwhelmed. I really was. And I only survived really because of my wife. But I look back now and, you know, forgiveness at the end of the day, not a problem for me. And because of that, I'm a second chance guy. And also because I lost money on that big tour and nobody, the managers of the artists wouldn't give me any money back, which I'm now grateful for. In America, when we go out and do shows and someone loses money, we give them money back. So the crazy thing is, Warwick, we have goodwill in the marketplace with all the promoters in America, because they know, oh, if we're working with the Smallbones, they'll take care of us. And so they work a little bit harder and they enjoy the experience, where sometimes there's animosity between the artist and the promoter. We don't have that. And that came out of the raw experience of doing music here in Australia. And what an incredible apprenticeship for what we've been able to do in America, and be able to come back here and share the hope in Jesus through music. It's a beautiful thing, Warwick.
Yeah. Just on that note, I think you've been listening to a guy named Jesus who said it is more blessed to give than to receive. And the other thing that Jesus said, given it will be given unto you, pressed down, shaken together, men will give back to you. So it sounds to me like you're putting that into practice by actually helping the promoters if they lose money, and actually basically you're giving some of your own money. It's actually your money, you've given it to them, but it comes back to you in goodwill. And of course, I mean, if I understand correctly, your guys are literally the top in the Christian music world. They're literally at the top of the tree. God bless them. And this movie is going. I know where it's up to as far as box office. It's 30, 40, kicking up that way, isn't it?
It's around 20 million. As of yesterday, it was. And 3 weeks, that's 3.5 weeks after the movie came out, it was number 9. I just looked at Tuesday's numbers. It was number 9 over there. And so, hey, buddy, we have a lot to be thankful for. And people come to me and say, well, what's your takeaway from the movie? And I say, well, that was a broken season for me. But what I can tell you, God is good, because my family saw the miraculous. I saw the miraculous, and we were given a story. And Blow Me Down, woke Hollywood is allowing this movie to come out. You know, like
Woke Hollywood is allowing it. Got one last question. We got to go because things that you have other things to do. I saw that interview, and you said something really profound. I don't hear many people talking about that CMMA interview. And you talked about, they said, like, how did all this happen? This popularity for Rebecca and the success. And you just sat back in the chair and said, it's about brokenness. It's about brokenness. It's come out of brokenness. Yep. I don't hear that very often. You're talking about the fact that death comes before life, and out of death comes life. And Paul says, death works in me that life might work in you. Can you explain what you meant by that statement and how it applies to your family and to what's happening today?
Well, what happened is I went over there to work for somebody, and he let me go after 2 months. And so suddenly I had my family on the other side of the world, and everything I tried didn't work. A year in, I had a record deal for Rebecca with Word Records, and on the day they were to sign us up, they pulled out. A guy from our church heard about it. We were supposed to get a $10,000 advance, and that was going to get us out of poverty. He gave us the $10,000. And I was pretty low at that time. We'd been in America a year. You know, most weeks we didn't know how we're going to put food on the table. And so I said, I got to give you something back, because my self-worth was at the lowest it's ever been, because I'd continued to receive rejection. And I said, I've got to give you back half of Rebecca's publishing. And he said, well, I don't want anything, but okay, if you insist, I'll take it, because the record label are going to take it. Over the next 10 years, that made him $250,000, $250,000, maybe even more. And he went on to be a missionary in the Ukraine. And so in my brokenness, it was almost like my Damascus experience. You know, I'm in the wilderness, but I saw that God is good. And because when I couldn't provide for my family, he did. And we became very much a praying family. I remember Joel at 31 years ago, he's about to turn 40, just praying fervently in our lounge room that didn't have any furniture. And Blow Me Down, you know, two or 3 weeks later, a Sunday school class furnished our house. That shows up in the movie as well. Yeah, and so it was, but he's seeing the miraculous. It changed the middle-aged bloke to a passionate 40-year-old, and we've continued to share his message loudly, and what a wonderful honor it is.
David Smallbone, thank you for talking to us today. I really appreciate your time. You've been very generous, and we just honor you. And if you haven't seen this movie yet, make sure you go and see Unsung Hero. It's in a cinema, I believe, reasonably close to you. Just go to the website, go to the link, and you'll find that cinema. You have to see it. It's a great family movie. It's a movie for mums and dads. It's a movie for children. It's a movie for teenagers. And it's a movie for you. God bless you.
Thanks, Warwick.